Nigel. Good boy. It's under here. Good boy. Hello, welcome to Gardener's World. Now, traditionally, August is rather a flat time in the garden. People go away on holiday and they feel they're not missing a lot. But I love August, not least because here in the Jewel Garden, the colours really stoke up and you get those intense reds and oranges and purples all working together. And they can take the light and the heat of these days. And as well as enjoying what the garden has to offer, I shall also be working in the pond, sorting it out, trying to get it as healthy as possible for the rest of summer and hopefully cooling off a bit. Carol is at Glebe Cottage with advice on how to deal with some of the pests that have been a particular problem this summer.
I've got this wonderful collection of plants together that will withstand attack from slugs and snails and their rasping radulas.
Jo visits a garden in North Wales where you might expect there to be heavy rainfall. But in this particular case, they discovered that they had much more water than they bargained for, but have made a virtue of it.
Is this being fed from...
This has been fed from the springs at the top there. You can actually see now.
Oh, right,
There we
OK.
are.
That's just a natural spring. You sure that's not solar powered?
No, not solar powered. There's no solar.
It's gorgeous.
And now is the time that I should be cutting the meadow grass on the cricket pitch. And on top of that, I'll be taking new plants from old from my strawberries. The pond is only 4 months old, but it's already got a nice settled feel. And things are starting to happen. The purple loosestrife is looking great. The ligularias are doing better than ever. They absolutely love it. And you can see in the pond itself, you have the water forget-me-nots, the mimulus. So all in all, I would say I am 99% satisfied with the pond and everything we've done here. The 1% that isn't quite working out is the algal growth on the surface. And that's because water has lots of nutrients. And in July and August, when you've got higher sunshine and more of it, inevitably you get growth. We've got silkweed, which is this sort of frothy, gunky, frankly unpleasant stuff. And as well as that, we have this here, duckweed. And that can spread to form a complete mat over the water. So you need to scoop that out, or at least keep a really tight eye on it. Improve the habitat, both for plants and for insects and animals. And they are going to consume nutrients which will compete directly with the algae. So they should help keep the water clear. I've got 3 different oxygenators here. This one is goldfish weed, which comes from southern Africa. And then I've got 2 other natives. I've got hornwort, and then the spiked milfoil. You can very often buy them, like the goldfish weed here, in clumps with a little bit of lead wrapping them together. And the lead means that they sink to the bottom. Now, where this touches the bottom, it will root, but it's also got aerial roots, so if it doesn't get into mud of any kind, it'll still survive. The reason I bought the bucket of water is because it's a good idea to wash them. That gets rid of any risk of introducing either bits of weed or animals that you don't want in your own pond. And then the planting of them couldn't be easier. I'm going to get back in to plant some, but I'll tell you, all you have to do is this. Job done. Chuck it in the water. As I've got my waders on, I'm just going to get in to spread them around. I like the hornwort because it's a native. I'm thinking of 1 plant or group per 2 feet. You don't have to be too accurate about this, but just spread them about. Now, you can buy these from either a specialist aquatic centre or a large garden centre should have its own aquatic department. And whoa, I nearly went there. Right, Right, I think that will make a real difference, and we should get some much clearer water as a result. Now, the water in this garden is an event, a happening. It either comes in on the flood, or else we make a pond and celebrate it. But Joe's been to visit a garden in North Wales where the water is absolutely an elemental part of the garden.
Nestled between mountains and sea, Conwy is one of the wettest regions of Britain.
But here lives a gardener who not only has the local weather to contend with, he also lives in an area known locally as the Field of the Seven Springs. You getting the idea?
When David Lloyd Boland moved into his house on a unique Water Riven site, he realised this mountainside location could be a great gardening opportunity.
The river comes from the top of the hill over here, and then comes down into our garden and then through into neighbouring properties over here.
When you took over this plot, you knew the river was there, did you?
When we took over the plot, we heard water, as we can today. We couldn't see it. It was like a bit of a discovery. We had to creep through the brambles and remove a tree from the top there, and eventually we found the stream we see here today.
So you thought, oh, brilliant, I've got my own water in my own irrigation system.
Well, that's right, and I thought it was a really great gardening opportunity. You know, we've got all this water.
Yeah.
We can use it for planting and, yeah. We've got about 20 springs in the garden, which just appear as we've been gardening and developing the garden. They just appear, and we've had to divert them and put them into place in the garden where it's a bit drier.
You're controlling the springs,
Yeah.
so you're moving them around. They go away from the lawn areas and
Away from lawn areas or the dry areas you want to keep dry. Yeah.
How do you divert a spring?
Just dig a big hole, line it with some Mitex, put some stones in, and then put some flexible tube in.
You're actually creating an underground irrigation system all the way through here.
Underneath, yeah. And
Okay.
using some planting as well. We've been putting some a lot of willow trees and things like that to try and suck the water up as well.
Yeah. You really have a huge array of plants, really, considering the diverse conditions that you've got here. Some of them are really dry. Phlomis, lavender. You've got a big eucalyptus tree over there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that likes to grow in a desert. It likes bushfires on it. Have you diverted streams around it or something?
Well, the eucalyptus is quite dry there. But, I mean, we do well here because the lavender is at the top of the bank, so they like the arid conditions up there.
Yeah,
And things that corn slow down.
phormiums as well.
I know. It's fantastic, isn't it?
So where does it get really wet then?
Well, you can see here, we've got a slight problem here. You can sort of see the water coming through here.
I can hear it.
Yeah, you can hear it in the floor here. This is one of our new springs now.
This is for 2012?
This is 2012 spring, yeah. You can see the water's coming through here. We'll probably leave it for a month or so, see if it sorts itself out. If not, we'll have to dig a trench across here.
Yeah.
Try and work out where the water sort of stops, and then drain down
Divert
into
it
this bed here.
down towards these phormiums.
Towards these phormiums, yeah.
And then where? It just goes down the hill?
And then we've got another drain at the bottom of this bed, which will then take it around the side.
It's a lot of work. Does it not wind you up after a while? Do you not think, can I not just have a normal garden?
Kind of sort of garden instead. Yeah, it's
Can I not garden rather than become sort of underground plumbing science?
That's right. It's like civil engineering, isn't it? But yeah, it's a thing we've got used to, and I find in the past if we ignore it, it causes more problems. So we just get on with it and pop them in.
Just pop them in, get on with it, move on.
That's right, yeah.
Even though the springs are a continuing challenge, some of the planting is phenomenal. Only a keen gardener who knows this site intimately could pull this off.
What about this? Is this been fed from?
This has been fed from the springs at the top there. Well, you can actually see now.
Oh, right,
There we
okay.
are.
That's just a natural spring.
That's a natural spring.
Again?
Yeah. So that's just started working this morning, actually.
You sure that's not solar powered?
No, not solar. No, there's no.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
Don't tell me that's a natural spring.
No, that's a pump, yeah. Got me there, Joe, yeah.
Yeah. And here we've got much wetter planting. I mean, ligularias and the ragged robin. Have you planted that in there?
Planted there last year, loves it there.
That is
It's
doing
well.
really nicely.
yeah.
Oh, it's a great array of plants.
But,
It's a lovely pond, though.
It fills up and goes out the far corner, down the garden.
And it just carries on over there
Down.
and down and away. And it's become somebody else's problem.
That's right.
Yeah.
We call this bit of ground the cricket pitch because a long time ago we used to play cricket on here occasionally. Now, the chestnut tree behind me was where the stumps were, so that's how long ago a ball was last bowled. But we have evolved a pattern of treating the grass, of letting it grow and enjoying all that that entails. In spring there are crocus, narcissi and fritillaries, and in early summer they're followed by clovers, buttercups and grasses. Now all in all this is nothing fancy, but it looks wonderful and the insects love it. But when it starts to look a bit tired, we cut it right back and let it revert to lawn. And to get the timing right, we let the seeds form. So the seeds of the wildflowers, and for example the clovers here, are now being shed, and that means if I cut it, the seeds will remain and it will all come back next year. This is not, strictly speaking, a wildflower meadow. Apart from anything else, soil like this is too rich. And if you want to keep the flowers growing strongly in amongst grass, you need to stop the grass taking over. Therefore, cut it, clear it all away, but by timing the cutting right, you can really enjoy what the grass has, plant some bulbs and flowers in spring before it grows too long, and then remove the grass so it doesn't dominate too much. And that way, you can roll it on year. All of us, whatever our soil is like, have been plagued by slugs and snails this year. I've never known a year like it. And there are lots and lots of different opinions and methods of getting rid of them, but none of them seem to work completely. However, Carol has been looking at plants that do resist slug and snail attack more than others.
It's been one of the wettest late springs and early summers that any of us can possibly remember. And because it's been so wet, every gardener has had a problem with slugs, and loads of you have written into us. This letter's typical, from Amanda Livingston. I have the most horrendous snail and slug problem. It seems they all live in my garden. I can't grow certain crops because of this problem. As fast as I remove them, they reproduce and multiply exponentially. Well, I'll tell you what, they do exactly the same thing here. Come and have a look at some of the damage they've caused me. I suppose this plant, hosta, is the classic plant that people mention when they're talking about slug damage. And it's because it's got these soft, fleshy, no doubt scrumptious leaves that slugs just adore. This beautiful Japanese woodlander, Kiringashima palmatum, has the same big, entire, soft leaves as the hosta. It had. Now they've been reduced to this sort of lace curtain effect. All that's been left behind is the veins that support the surface of the leaf. They're obviously unpalatable and not to the slug's taste at all. Anyway, why go for those when you've got all that lovely soft leaf surface to munch on? But down here is something which seems to be totally impervious. It's a hellebore, Hellebore hybridus, and it's got these big, tough, strong, robust leaves. And the surface of them is extremely hard, impenetrable. The slugs obviously don't find it to their taste. Hellebores are in the family of Ranunculaceae, the buttercup family, and most of the family seem to be impervious to slug damage. You very seldom see slug holes on Aquilegias, aconites, all manner of plants, and there are other families too that slugs very seldom seem to attack. If you're planting a new bed or just trying to replace plants that have been badly damaged by slugs and snails, it's common sense really to take a look around your and other people's gardens to see which plants are going to be impervious to slug attack and are going to give you the best possible show for the longest time. Gardeners love roses, but slugs don't. They never touch them. Astilbes too are members of the rose family, Rosaceae. The leaves are quite hard and shiny, but I suspect that Astilbes and lots of other herbaceous members of the rose family, have sort of a medicinal quality to the aroma of their roots, and possibly it permeates the whole plant, leaves, stems and flowers, so astilbes aren't on the menu. Geraniums are another big group of plants that they leave alone. I think the best idea is to put together a selection of plants that slugs and snails just don't like. I've got this wonderful collection of plants together and I'm going to use them to plant this new little bed, but also that they'll withstand attack from slugs and snails and their rasping radulas. They're going to leave these plants alone and allow us to enjoy them. This lovely agastache, it's called Blackadder, and it's a very, very aromatic plant. It's got this slightly minty, almost, oh, it's indescribable, this perfume, but it really is strong. And that puts slugs off. This is Nautia. Now, you don't really think of this as being a hairy plant, but when you actually examine the stems and run your fingers up there, it really is. It's quite bristly. And those pom-pom flowers are a total delight, followed by seed heads, and again, very, very long flowering. And I'll emphasise that dark red, that lovely crimson, with these sedums. And although it's got succulent leaves, you really don't get any damage at all on sedums. Possibly when they're just coming through in the spring, but once that hard surface has been made, once it's there, slugs leave them alone. And the Penstemon that I want to include in this arrangement is this one. It's called Penstemon heterophyllus heavenly blue, and it has the most beautifully coloured flowers. Penstemon are in the Scrophulariaceae family, the same family as foxgloves. None of those groups of plants ever get eaten by slugs. This belongs to the mallow family, lovely Sidalcias, called Elsihuib. Well, hopefully I've given you a few clues about the kind of plants you can choose, not only to make a really long display that goes on giving you joy and beauty for ages, but also one that'll last because it doesn't get consumed by slugs and snails. It's no hardship because there's such a lot of beautiful plants from which to choose.
I think it's fair to say that our strawberry harvest this year has been mixed. The plants are really healthy. They're growing well. They produce lots and lots of fruit. Well, you'd think that was exactly what they're meant to do. The downside was that the fruit tended to ripen unevenly. So you'd see this lovely, luscious red berry lifted up and it'd be white underneath because there just wasn't enough light or heat. And also, they rotted rather a lot. And even at their very best, the taste was a little insipid and watery. Well, that's entirely down to the weather. Nothing you can do about that. But these have done their stuff, so I need to plan for next year and thereafter. Because the key to growing strawberries is not to keep growing them on the same plot year after year. They reach their peak after 3 years, and thereafter they accumulate viruses. So you should ditch your plants after 3 years, which means replacing them. And the easiest way to do that is by taking runners. Now, you can see that a really healthy plant like that, which is 1 year old, is now pushing out runners. And here's one, look at that. So if you see, you've got this long stem coming through, twining there, and you've got a new plantlet developing about 2 or 3 feet from the plant, and then another one there, and potentially another. So you could get 3 or 4 new plants, but it's dead easy to do. You can either just pin that down onto the ground. That will work well. Nothing wrong with that at all. But then I'd have to dig it up to move it. So what I prefer to do is prepare a gritty compost. And gritty because the roots will have an easier run, and they're not going to stay in this for very long. Like that. And then get the runner, and always take the runner closest to the plant. That will have most vigour. And just put it on top of the surface of the compost and pin it down. And where it touches the soil, it really wants to produce roots. You don't have to add anything to it or do anything clever. And I'll just scrape that and put it in. Now, it's important that it remains connected to the parent. It's an umbilical cord because it hasn't got any roots of its own yet. Leave it for about 3 to 4 weeks, and if you see nice growth, you can cut it separate from the parent, take it away, and you've got next year's first year plant. And just to stress, you don't grow strawberries on the same plot year after year. But, you know, I'm making it sound complicated. You put them in the ground, they grow, you protect them from the birds, they produce fruit. It's not that difficult. We also grow alpine strawberries, or wild strawberries, that are native, and they can become a bit invasive and a bit of a weed. So by running them underneath a hedge, they're contained, but they look good. And also, the tiny little fruit are delicious, like little strawberry jewels that you can just add to a bowl of yogurt, say. But to pick a decent bowlful really does take a long time. However, there is a variety that's specially been bred from wild strawberries called Four Seasons. Quattro Stagioni. And I sowed them 18 months ago, and look, I've got really good-sized plants, in fact, practically a hedge of them, and masses of fruit. They taste good, they're big enough to make picking relatively easy, but still small and sweet and delicious. And like the wild strawberry, they go on producing all summer, right into autumn. They spread by seed, by root extension, and also a few runners. So there's a possibility that they could become invasive, but I'll watch and see. Now, if you don't grow strawberries and if you don't want to grow strawberries, here are some other things that you can be getting on with this weekend. Collecting your own seed is doubly satisfying. Not only does it preserve your favourite plants from the garden, but can also save you an awful lot of money. Cut the seed heads off and put them into a paper bag or envelope where they can be stored in a cool, dark place for weeks or even months. If you have flowers that you think are particularly special, it's worth marking them for future collection. But bear in mind that not all plants come true from seed. People can get obsessed with compost, and I should know. However, there is only one real secret, and that is to turn it regularly, ideally about once a month. And this will let air in, which will feed the bacteria. And you can guarantee all your waste material will turn into good garden compost. As the summer fruiting raspberries come to the end of their season, the autumn fruiting ones start to produce fruit. And it's important to support the canes, which are growing very vigorously, so you can reach the fruit and pick them easily. This doesn't have to be anything elaborate, just as long as it lasts into autumn, and then it can all be dismantled and the canes cut down. Now that the birds have left their nest, it's the perfect moment to give your hedge a trim. Doesn't matter what kind of hedge it is, it's important to give it a slight batter, which is to say the bottom should always be wider than the top. Otherwise, the top growth will shade out the bottom and you get gaps in the base of the hedge. Cut the sides first and then trim the top to whatever height you want. And that should keep it looking neat for the rest of the summer. Another thing to do regularly at this time of year if you have a pond is to top it up, because it's surprising how much you lose through evaporation. And of course, adding water moves it on, stops it being stagnant and adds oxygen. So generally a really important good thing to do. And we have this enormous rainwater tank, which for years we didn't really know what to do with. But it's proved ideal for filling the pond initially and for keeping it topped up. And it does mean that if we get a very wet period, at least we know we've got water to do it, even if we're followed by a drought. So I want to connect this up to the pond. I'm one of these people who can tangle up a hose pipe that has been perfectly sorted out, and it still knots up. And I have to join about 3 to make this happen. Now I've lost the end. Where is it? No? No. Somewhere in there is an end, or should be. You'd think there are only two ends to a hose pipe, and one end is attached up there. Blowed if I know where the other one's gone. Ta-da! Right, we put that over into the pond, like that. And now I go and connect up at that end, run down here, and see if the water comes out. Not much of a flow, but there's hardly any fall, and it's enough. I can leave that on all night until it fills up and overflows gently, and all the hostas and the boggy plants will love that. And the pond will be refreshed. That's the key thing. We get new water in and oxygen, and that will help keep the weed at bay. Talking of which, now that it's settled after splashing around in it, it's clear, isn't it? That's not bad. And that's all we've got time for. But I'll be back here next Friday, so I'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Two world wars, industry and empire on the wane. The great British story of the 20th century is next.